Welcome back to another Advocacy Update. I'm Jen Goodale, and this is Cory Titus from MOAA's Government Relations team. We hope that you've liked and you're subscribed to these videos so that you can stay tuned to what's going on in your military community. Let's talk National Defense Authorization Act, because 'tis the season.
Exactly. We just got the 3,000-page conference report released, and our entire government relations team has been tearing through it. So let's break down some of the important items from it.
Okay. And we got a lot of great stuff in here.
Yes.
But let's just quickly cover the few things that didn't get.
Yeah, exactly. We don't get everything in every bill. It does take time to get all these initiatives through. But let's quickly touch on a couple items before jumping into everything that is in there.
Yeah, one of those things that does take time is when reports are due. So there's a report due in March of next year on Arlington National Cemetery and kind of scoping out what the next plan is for a national cemetery. So they're just going to wait on the report. We did not actually establish that yet.
Yeah, exactly.
What's another thing?
Well, one of the other items was the BH reabsorption. So that was something that we went to the Hill on for our advocacy in action and raised awareness about the impact of housing costs on service members. So
the good news is that's a big priority for Quality of Life panel, which is really trying to influence next year's NDAA. So I'm really confident that we're going to see something. Now let's shift to the positives, though, because we want to talk compensation. There's a lot of good changes there.
Right, exactly. And so we didn't see the targeted pay raise adjusted in the NDAA this year. Congress wants to do a little bit more looking at whether those are the right levels. But what we did see is the increase in the Secretary's authority to add bonuses to address the recruiting challenges. So E1s to E6s are going to get the chance to have a little bit of a plus up when the conditions require that. So
do we have any idea how much money or who's getting that money?
It's still a little bit vague about what's going to actually happen there, but this right now, it always takes time for these kind of things to get flushed out. And ultimately, the bill hasn't been signed by the president yet, so we've got some time to figure out how it's going to be implemented. Another
thing that's a little bit vague is the basic needs allowance. We were really adamant that they eliminate the basic allowance for housing in the calculation of eligibility. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, but they did include a provision to expand the service secretary's authority to give out more basic needs allowances to those people that need it. Again, though, it's vague, and we have no idea what that's going to look like yet.
There are some concrete changes that we can talk about.
Let's talk about those.
That's the family separation allowance, because that hasn't been adjusted for almost 2 decades now. Tell us about that.
So it was $250 over time. We advocated that it would become $400. We didn't quite get that, but we will see a plus up. And what's really great is the QRMC, the Quadrennial Review of Military Compensation, will actually have to look at that going forward. So it's not going to be another 2 decades that we have to wait.
That's very good news. So something else that was adjusted was the CONUS COLA. And what this does is there's a threshold of 8% above the national average for everyday cost of living items. And what this did is it reduced the threshold down 3% to 5%. So anywhere where the average cost of items is 5% or greater above the national average, service members and their families can see a little bit of a plus up in their paycheck.
And I'm going to make a note right now. We're going to do a future episode on just COLA to figure out, because it's a little bit confusing. So let's dive deeper into that later.
Yeah, absolutely. Good idea.
But another positive in the healthcare space is that we are actually going to see a report on the impact that pharmacy cut made last year is having on beneficiaries across the nation. And that was something that we advocated for strongly. It's in both versions, and hopefully will be in the version the President signs.
And that's because of a big part due to our work on the Hill.
Yes, absolutely. In the family section, there's a lot of great provisions. One of the ones that we've come to rely on over many years is impact aid. Yep. So this authorizes $50 million in impact aid, and then an additional $20 million for those with severe disabilities. And it's kind of something that we expect to see, but it's always nice to confirm that it's actually happened.
What's the actual impact of that aid?
So when military families are all in one area, whatever school is located there gets less tax dollars because they're relying on that local support, but not everybody in the military is paying taxes where they're living. And it helps military families, and it helps the local school district. So we're always pleased to see that.
And there's some exciting changes to how student loans are handled for military spouses.
I don't want to get overly excited about it, but there's a new program that's going to allow student loan deferment specifically for military spouses. There are many programs that already exist. This one's specifically going to be designed for military spouses who lose employment due to a PCS move. We've got to dig in and get more details on that, but it's specifically for federal student loans.
I mean, ultimately, it always comes down to how is it implemented.
Exactly. The establishment of the Military Family Housing Council is something that we've been working on a lot. We've worked with Senator Warren's office on this, and she's been a huge proponent of fixing this privatized military housing. And we think that a readiness council is just going to make sure that the attention doesn't just stay on this issue during a hearing. It's going to stay on it year-round because there are required reports to the House Armed Services and Senate Armed Services committees.
Okay. Well, let's say we talked about a lot of provisions that affect the active component. We have the reserve component as well, and there's some important changes there. So start with the family side. This
year's NDAA includes parental leave parity for members of reserve components, which will actually allow them, upon the birth, adoption, or long-term fostering of a child, to actually spend more time bonding with that child. Huge win.
That's great.
What else is going to happen for the reserve component?
So I've been focused a lot on the special and incentive pay for the reserve component, establishing parity there. So if a service member in the reserve component maintains a qualification for jump pay, for example, they are only paid at 1/30th of the rate. So even though they're doing the same requirements to maintain the same qualification, they're not getting paid at the same level. So we had some progress on this last year where DoD was required to do a report and make sure that there wouldn't be any adverse effects on recruiting or retention. And that the establishment of parity was contingent upon them certifying that wouldn't happen.
And it worked?
DoD delayed the report and never actually certified it. So what this does is this changes the requirement. So instead of doing a broad thumbs up, thumbs down for the entirety of these special and incentives pays, this has them go line by line and a little bit more nuanced look at each of these pays. So we're optimistic that we'll actually see some movement on this issue and some parity with the active component. No, the NDAA is not just for the active and reserve component. It's also a vehicle to take care of our survivors. So what do we see there?
We're really pleased that now remarried survivors will have access to commissary and exchange privileges. And that might seem really small, but it's a huge benefit, and it's tied to this identity that they once had. And when you lose that, you lose not only the benefit, but you lose a community. So we're very pleased to see that in there. It's no cost, and it will actually benefit currently serving families.
Right, because ultimately a lot of the shopping that is done with exchanges goes
right back into MWR programs.
Exactly. Well, that's a quick summary of a very big bill. Be sure to subscribe to the MOAA newsletter, this channel, and our Legislative Action Center to follow the latest on all of this. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.